One night, a few hours in the icy darkness of the Atlantic, and an empire built over decades began to fall apart. This is not only the story of a ship that sank, it is the story of a family that possessed millions, influence, and the future, and lost more than money. At the beginning of the 20th century, the name Guggenheim meant power. Their mines fueled industrial America. Their capital moved metal markets. Their surname appeared among the wealthiest families in the world, long before Forbes ever existed. The founder of the dynasty is considered to be Meyer Guggenheim, a Jewish immigrant from Switzerland who arrived in the United States in the mid-19th century with almost nothing. At first, he traded imported goods, but his true breakthrough came when he understood a key rule of the industrial age. Whoever controls raw materials controls the future. In the 1870s and 1880s, the Guggenheims began acquiring mines: silver in Colorado, copper in Montana, lead in Mexico. Later, deposits in Chile and Peru. They did not merely extract metal. They built a vertically integrated empire, from mines to smelters, from transportation to export. By the end of the 19th century, the family controlled a significant share of America's silver and copper production. Companies connected to the Guggenheims became the core of what would later evolve into giants such as ASARCO, one of the largest metallurgical corporations of its time. At the peak of their power, around 1905-1912, the combined fortune of the Guggenheim family was estimated at approximately 30 to 40 million US dollars of that era. Adjusted for inflation and purchasing power, this equals roughly $900 million to $1.3 billion today. But if one accounts for their control over industrial assets, their influence on the copper, silver, and lead markets, as well as indirect ownership through holding companies and trusts, historians estimate the family's overall economic impact at the equivalent of $5 to $10 billion in today's terms. For comparison, during the same period, John D. Rockefeller's fortune was estimated at about $400 million, roughly $12 to $15 billion today. Andrew Carnegie's wealth stood at around $300 million, equivalent to $9 to $10 billion today. In other words, the Guggenheims truly stood in the same league as America's greatest financial dynasties, even if they were less public and less visible in newspaper headlines. But as with many dynasties, the true strength of the Guggenheims rested not only on money, but on specific individuals. One of them was Benjamin Guggenheim, the fifth son of Meyer Guggenheim. He was not a silent owner or a dry accountant. Benjamin was the public face of the family, charismatic, well-educated, and impeccably mannered. He represented the family's interests in Europe, managed investments, conducted negotiations, and often acted as a bridge between different branches of the family. He was the one who maintained the balance between business and family politics, something often more difficult than managing millions. In April 1912, Benjamin was in Europe. After completing his business affairs, he decided to return to the United States aboard the newest ocean liner in the world, RMS Titanic, a first-class ticket, luxurious suites, a symbol of technological superiority. Titanic was not merely a ship. It was a declaration that humanity had conquered nature. On April 14, 1912, at approximately 11:40 p.m., the liner struck an iceberg. The damage seemed minor. There was no immediate panic. The orchestra played. But the hull had been torn open below the waterline across multiple compartments. Less than 3 hours later, the ship vanished beneath the surface. Out of more than 2,200 passengers and crew members, over 1,500 lost their lives. Among them, Benjamin Guggenheim. Witnesses later recalled a scene that would become legendary. When it became clear that survival was unlikely, Benjamin returned to his cabin, changed into formal evening wear, and said words that would enter history. "We are dressed in our best and prepared to go down like gentlemen." The phrase appeared in newspapers on both sides of the Atlantic, But behind the romantic image lay a far harsher reality. Benjamin's death became a structural blow to the Guggenheim empire. He was not simply an heir, he was the node that connected interests, businesses, and people. After the catastrophe, processes began that outwardly seemed ordinary. Management revisions, redistribution of shares, new directors, new decisions. But internally something essential disappeared: unity. Different branches of the Guggenheim family began moving in separate directions. Some heirs wanted to preserve heavy industry. Others sought to exit risky assets. Control over certain companies weakened. Parts of the business were sold or merged into outside corporations. External pressure intensified as well. World War I erupted. Commodity markets shifted. Government regulation expanded. The old model of a family-controlled industrial empire gradually ceased to function. The Guggenheims did not vanish overnight, nor did they collapse into bankruptcy. But the empire as a single unified system no longer existed. By the mid-20th century, most industrial assets had either been lost or transformed into minority stakes within other structures. The irony is that after the decline of their industrial power, the family left behind a legacy that would outlive metal and mines. One of the brothers, Solomon Guggenheim, redirected capital not into factories, but into art. In 1937, the Solomon R. Guggenheim Foundation was established. Later came the museum in New York, and eventually the iconic Guggenheim Museum in Bilbao. This was a different kind of empire, cultural, symbolic, but no longer one that controlled copper, silver, and factories. The story of the Guggenheims is a reminder often lost behind charts and numbers. Financial empires appear monolithic, but very often they rest on a single person, not on markets, not on technology, but on someone capable of holding everything together. And when such a person disappears, sometimes all it takes is one night in the Atlantic Ocean for an entire empire to begin sinking with them.